to Simpler. We are three pastors, husbands, and fathers on a journey to make life simpler by holding Jesus as the core for every belief and practice. This journey has shaped us to be more like Christ, freed us from the shame of failure, and encouraged us to a deeper love of our Lord and God. We invite you to join us in the discussions that have shaped and continue to shape our lives.
Rolling with my homies.
See, that's what I say. Mahomes, though, from
July
Patrick Mahomes.
27th.
Oh, yeah, the Mahomes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mahoney's.
Mahomes.
I've recently had some trauma in my head.
You recently had a not stroke.
That's right.
Mahomes.
We were at the
And you're probably pretty tired. Youth camp just wrapped up.
Yeah. It's been a time. It's been a time. I told somebody recently went to the hospital and they were like, "Yeah, we had to wait there for a long time." And I said, I know the keywords to get to the back real fast. So you just gotta say you were slurring your words for a while, and they just send you straight to the back.
That's awesome. Hey, speaking of slurs, there's this crazy correlation I found that between 1999 and 2010, the number of people who drowned after falling out of a fishing boat directly correlated with the marriage rate in Kentucky.
I have a lot I want to say, but I'm not going to. I don't know that it would get anywhere very good. So.
You know what happens in my mind? Every time you say one of these correlations, I think about at the end of what's the Christmas movie? It's a Wonderful World, or It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life, where every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
Yeah.
So every time somebody drowns, somebody gets married. It's just like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh man. Numbers.
Can you imagine if like real politicians actually use these kind of correlations? Oh wait,
They do.
Oh, wait a minute. They actually do. Think about that for a second. Chew. Hey, where am I? Which camera? As if we have a whole studio audience. Which camera? Cut in on me. Think about that for a second.
Zoom.
Yeah. Steven takes up the phone and just walks it towards you.
Yeah. We have a live studio audience of Steven.
Somebody's gonna book this place and they're gonna walk in and they're gonna go, "Oh,
Wait a minute.
Y'all made it sound so
The
cool."
way that Pierce points around, this place seems huge, man.
Hey,
Cameras on
you there in the
dollies.
back.
Hey, we should do this live sometime with like an actual audience.
Oh, it'd be
fun.
dope.
Oh, yeah, that would be
In
fun.
here, we should sell 100 tickets and just pack the place out.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
it'd be great. So we're wrapping up July.
I know.
You guys doing all right? The year's flying by.
Flying by.
Yeah, doing well. Had vacation, and that was nice.
Yeah.
Family, like we really, really missed not getting away in 2020.
Yeah.
Like we really missed not getting to go to Ruidoso and relax. And
It was a rough year.
Yeah.
So I hear, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I had a not stroke, so
That's right, yeah. I don't remember any of that.
yeah. So it's been good. It's hard to
Yeah.
believe that it's July.
It is hard to believe that it's
It feels
July.
like it's May almost. Like it's
yeah, it does. It's weird.
I'll be in Colorado next week.
yeah. That's crazy.
So, living the high life.
oh, great! Not even coming to church, you heathen.
counting down the days.
No, I'll be there. I will miss 1 week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good time. I'm good.
Hey, Pierce, how are you doing, man?
I'm pretty good, Mike.
Awesome.
I'm doing all right. Yeah, you're right. So like with summer wrapping up, it's funny because there is like this sigh of relief of like, oh, we did it. But also like I try to temper as much of that as I can. I found in my older, well, that sounds like I'm really old, but I found in my older age, as I grow up, I found that like I don't want to keep looking forward to things being done.
Mhm.
But I'm ready for the sigh of relief. I'm ready for the release of stress or whatever. But I also don't want that to be like my main goal. I want to enjoy where I am. I want to enjoy the camp experience. I want to enjoy all the events that we have going on that even though I'm having to do a lot of work for them, I still want to enjoy them and be present for them. So that's been what I've been working on a lot during this summer. And
I'm just glad we have another month with. I don't have to set an alarm.
that's right. That's right.
Ugh. You were what?
What if your kids are in football camp all summer?
Yeah.
Then
That's what I'm going to do with
that's your problem, I guess.
Sucks to have cool kids.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
Your kids play football.
That would have been a good segue.
Actually, I played football too growing up. Just
Football.
Not football. It's funny I say that because I literally never played football. I got hurt and soccer every time before football season started. So after middle school, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to try this anymore.
So what sport do you play now?
Yep. I play disc golf and I play in the age protected 40-year-old professional division.
That's right.
Which I am loving this
Yeah.
year because I can play like just okay and still cash in these pro tournaments.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
that's right. You just had to grow up a little bit.
That's right. They had to check my license when I pulled up.
Well, I
to
just
the
mean
course.
age wise, just
No, I know.
literally legally.
I know. Yeah, no. You're never mind. I'll tell you later.
Did I do something silly?
I think Ryan's tired again tonight.
Well, I just
I want you to tell me right now. Ryan.
you pushed grow up together, and it. At first, I heard you say you just had to grope a little bit.
Did you know if you want to cash out, you just got to grope a little bit?
Wow. That's what I heard. But I am, yeah.
Yeah. Sleepy Ryan's a fun Ryan.
It is such a fun Ryan. I like Sleepy Ryan.
Let's take Sleepy Ryan over to the PCC. How
Let's
about we
do
go
it,
over
man.
there real quick? This is Pierce's Culture.
it's
Corner.
magical.
We're here to hang out where it's fun. We're going to contemplate some culture and think about it real quick. Today is something that we've I don't know if we've talked about as individuals, but I feel like we've probably thought about just in general. Actually, you know what, Ryan, you and I have talked about this before.
I thought so.
Gift giving and gift buying. Real quick. There you go.
That's a gift.
That's a
Yes.
gift.
Oh,
Yeah.
Dr. Pepper,
That's right.
23
I
flavors.
feel like this will be my yes. For a while, hopefully this will be my last mini on set.
There you go.
Probably next episode. we'll
What
get
I
back
want to
it
do
real
is we should like commission Dr. Pepper to make us like smaller and smaller cans so people think you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You're like Dr. Pepper.
It's like
And what we could do is a Lord of the Rings kind of thing where we move him closer and closer to the camera,
There you
but
go.
us
Yes,
further
exactly.
away.
So we're just
But
like
we're
this
still
super
looking
tiny-
like this, like we're talking to him.
It's like a thimble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Anyway, buying gifts and stuff
Buying
like that.
gifts,
So one of the things that I hate, especially, or one thing that I've noticed, just especially with having kids,
Kid.
with having a kid, is there's people kind of always giving you things and always doing things, which actually I love that aspect of it. But we also live in a culture where there is this like minor aspect of returning the favor.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that you and I've talked about, Ryan, is like there is this sense with gift giving of obligation. If it's outside of like holidays or birthdays, but even then, if it's somebody you don't know very well and they get you a gift, when their birthday rolls around, how do you feel?
Yeah.
I have to give them a gift, even though I don't know them very well. They got me a gift last year. Well, I should probably get them a gift this year. That's usually how it goes, right? And what sucks is like there's just this perpetual loop of always like you kind of have to budget. Okay, well, I know this guy's gonna get me a gift, so I probably should budget like $50 for him. And I know we're gonna be invited to so and so's kid's birthday party, so I got to budget
It's
like
expensive.
$20 for him. Yeah, so like you're budgeting all these different things. And don't get me wrong, I love giving gifts. I love getting people things. I think it's awesome. I love when we're at a place financially to be able to do those things, even like sporadically. It doesn't even have to be like a reason to do it, but always in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I saw this thing that I know this person's gonna like. I don't want them to feel like they have to give me anything. I don't want them to feel like they have to do anything for me. Just the other day, like I had some family over, they were helping me out with some stuff. And I was like, well, as you guys are helping me out, you're taking time out of your day, I'm going to be nice to you guys and buy you guys all lunch. And there was such a long story short, my mom was like, nope, I'm going to buy everybody lunch. And so then I was like, no, I'm going to buy everybody lunch. And then my mom was like, no, I think I'm going to buy everybody lunch. And I was like, how about you take my card? And because she was going to go pick it up. And I was like, I know what's going to happen, but just please take my card and we're going to buy everybody lunch because we would like to do that. And then she got back and we were eating lunch. Oh yeah, by the way, how much was it? And she told me, and then she was like, but I got it. She gave me the card back.
Well, if you knew that was a formula, couldn't you just use that every time, right? Like,
Yeah, for real.
hey, we're out of money. We can't go out to eat this month. Well, we can call my mom.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
And offer to buy.
I need to have a dummy credit card as well.
There
Just
you
be like,
go.
hey, bro, I got this. But I don't know, I got it. And then we'll just take my card just in case.
Yeah. Just a library card. No one's looking
Yeah, for
closely.
real. Oh yeah, sure, whatever. Just toss in your pocket. But anyway, so the culture commentary is this. The commentary is there's guilt. There is those types of things. There's obligation. There is those things, and I hate it. There seems to be more authenticity and genuine gift giving amongst closer friends. It seems. There doesn't seem to be actually like keeping tabs of who gives what when.
Mhm.
One of my favorite gifts of that I'd heard. There was a friend of mine. They had, and maybe it was a friend or somebody. I'd heard this story of their grandparents that one of them had bought like a Dollar General card that just said like "Happy Birthday, Grandma" or something like that. They started sending that card one of them sent that card to the other guy. And I was like, hey, thought of you today. Happy birthday, whatever, and signed it. And then the next year, that friend found that same card that he got sent, signed it again, and sent it back and forth. They sent it back and forth to each other on each other's birthday for like 50 years. And
That's
so like
awesome.
They were finding different spots to fill in to write happy birthday, man. Like,
Fantastic.
just fill it in. So like one guy spent $1.50, like, well, actually probably like spent 2 cents 50 years ago. And
Yeah.
then they just sent that same card back and forth. And now I think that the grandkids had talked about like they're going to frame that and like
That's
probably
cool.
send it between the families. Like every year they'll hang it up in their house or whatever
Yeah.
to kind of commemorate their
Was
their
Dollar
grandparents.
General around 50 years ago?
Yeah, no, yeah. So I probably should have said a general store instead of Dollar General. But either way, like they're so the challenge. This PCC comes to the challenge. This is a PCCC. PCC. Pierce's Culture Commentary Challenge.
That's
cool.
CCC.
But I said PCCCC. But the very
Oh.
first
There's
C.
way too many
that was
Cs
my
over
stutter. PCCCCCCCC.
You're having a.
You guys remember the beginning of the summer when I had a stroke? So challenge.
But it wasn't a stroke.
But it wasn't a stroke. Challenge. Can we just slowly begin to push this obligation, this obligatory gift giving out? Like I understand that is the culture we live in, but change begins with us. Be the change you want to see in the world. I want change to start with gift giving now, not because we're all poor, but really because it's so inauthentic. Like, I mean, there's plenty of times. One of my favorite things, because of gift giving is a lot of the times it's so silly to me. I love going to Dollar Tree and buying Spanish
Olives?
greeting cards for
Oh.
people. It's one of my favorite things ever. A buddy of mine started doing that for me. He was like, "Hey, I didn't get you." Yeah, exactly. He was, "Hey, I didn't get you a gift, but I got you this card." And it was like mi abuelita. It was
That's what
like
I'm talking about.
this long poem in Spanish, and at the very bottom, he just wrote, "I meant every word, Caleb." I think it's the best gift I've ever received. So now I'm still
Wow,
talking.
you're a cheap date.
I know, right? So anyway, so
Can I give you a little bit of mind
that's-
play?
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation where like you know someone who like makes things or like paints things or does some kind of specialty,
Mm-hmm.
if you want one of those things but don't want to pay for it, if you give them a gift, you oftentimes get that thing for a very discounted
That's
rate.
true. So maybe instead of breaking the system, use the system.
I'm all about using the system.
Speaking of using the system,
Your segues, man, are on point.
this month has been just the worst. I blame it on things. So speaking of either breaking the system or using the system, some people, I don't know where I'm going with this. Let's see. Let's start over. Some people have kids and some people don't have kids.
It's good.
And you
So
know what? Actually, here's another way we do it. With the PCC, some of you guys may just skip over it and just go to the quote unquote serious stuff because you don't take me seriously. Because I'm not a serious.
There you
I'm
go.
not a guy to be taken seriously. I'm not a guy to be taken. You know, what I say doesn't hold any weight. You know, I'm not the real deal.
You're not a real.
I'm not a real dad, as Micah says. Whoa, wait a minute. We're talking about parenting today.
Hey.
There we go. I'm back.
So at this point, Ryan and I will start having a conversation.
Yes.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah.
So we're talking about parenting today, Ryan.
Your daughter's barely one. Like, what do you know?
Jack Squat.
Yeah. So we're talking about parenting, and I think that most people think, man, I'm gonna do better than my parents did. Even if you had good parents, like I
Yeah.
think you think I want to do differently than my parents did. And that's not an insult to your parents necessarily. It's just I think that most kids grow up thinking about what they want to do differently rather than like, what they're going to do the same. So we want to talk a little bit about parenting. This is from my friend Elizabeth, who for like 6 years has been asking me to write a book on parenting. And so consider this the introduction. And in another 6 years, I'll get to something else. But
Ryan,
Pierce,
I know you had that whole disclaimer and stuff like that, but isn't parenting really just about doing the best that we can?
Well, actually, Pierce, I think that's probably how a lot of people feel.
Yeah.
We just got to do the best we can to raise
Mhm.
kids. From the Christian perspective, raising kids has to be about instilling the gospel into the lives of our kids and causing the gospel to be something we can't save them. That's between them and God's work in their lives. But presenting the gospel to them and making the gospel tangible in the way that we love them, and that we're raising them with intentionality and raising them with the gospel in view. So Micah, you've been a parent the longest
of us three.
and
That's right.
and the most. You have 4 kids.
The longest and the most.
So far, I mean, I feel like
You're the
Pierce is
most
passing me up in everything else in life. He now owns more rent houses than I
Yeah.
do.
Wow, yeah, he's what is it? You're in real estate now.
In real estate.
You
Yeah.
are in real estate.
In
though.
real-
Like,
I know,
you really
yeah.
are in real estate.
Which is wild. Yeah. I would have never said it that way, but I am.
You're in real
estate.
estate. Mike is in Dogecoin.
I have 0 Doge.
I have some Doge.
Steven has some Doge.
No, I got out of that.
Oh, you goofballs.
I do have other stuff.
Try not to invest in something that was created as a joke.
Yeah,
I made some money on that joke though, but I mean,
but
A
whatever.
lot of people did.
it's true.
All right.
Anyway,
So Micah.
the most parent of us all.
What about it?
Yeah.
Sorry, what are you asking?
So talk to us about parenting, man, with intentionality and the gospel in view.
So what's funny is, I feel like there
That
were
is
so many
funny.
people who gave us parenting advice prior to us having, like when we were pregnant, or even
Mhm.
at the beginning of us having kids, and the majority of that advice was wrapped around practical things,
Mhm.
especially with babies. Like, here's how you do this with your baby. Make sure you don't have this with your baby. Like, I learned something recently from Pierce and it was Hannah or Mary Beth that told me this, that I guess you're not supposed to give babies honey. Was it
Oh,
honey?
it was Hannah. Yeah. Yeah. It's honey. Yeah.
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 Had no idea.
Honey and like peanut butter until
Yeah,
they're like a
is that
year
what
old.
happened to your first kid?
Probably so. That's why he's so freaking smart. I think that Cammy probably knew that. I just didn't. I mean, for all I
Yeah.
knew, I was doing like, honey butter chicken biscuits. So my baby's not really. But most of the parenting advice was that. What's funny is, and those were the majority of those people were believers. I mean, our context is, I'm traveling, preaching. We're at church. My family, most of them are believers. So most of the advice we're getting was practical, and rarely do I hear people giving parenting advice that is wrapped around Jesus.
Yeah.
They'll often. It's funny. I don't know why this is our tendency. We tend to try to give advice, especially for parenting, based on our own experiences.
Sure.
And there's some merit to that, but I think a lot of times what you were saying earlier, Ryan, rings true, is that our parenting perspective is simply just trying to take another step from where we were underneath our parents.
Yeah.
We talk about. I mean, discipline obviously is a really good question to be asked and talked about in parenting, but usually discipline is talked about like in terms of what did my parents do. Rarely do we talk about
Yeah.
discipline in the context of what am I trying to accomplish with my kids. So I think what's important for us to talk about today, instead of just a bunch of practical things, which is important, is the intentionality of what we're trying to do with our kids, which is what you mentioned, Ryan. If my kid is incredibly disciplined, does well in school, is good at sports, is socially, okay, graduates, goes to a good college, gets a scholarship, has a good job, and has no concern for Jesus, and what in the world have I done?
Yeah.
Right.
If my kid doesn't graduate college, or if my
Hey-o.
kid, these two guys, I mean, like if my kid,
Decides
if my
to be an
kid
artist.
decides to do something like
Hey-o.
but if they don't in my own mind do what I want them to do per se, but they are desperately in love with Jesus, I've
Yeah.
succeeded as a parent. And I think that there's an essence where we spend so much time talking about the practical, which are important, but I think we have to have the foundation set before we can
Sure.
go to the practical.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, your kid not eating honey until they're 1 is a good thing to know, but
You
doesn't
want your kid to live.
but doesn't
Yeah, if you don't
shape
wanna-
anything for eternity. Doesn't help them to deal with trauma or trials
Right.
or whatever.
I mean,
make
I think that
decisions.
the majority of the time when my older two were 14 months apart, when they were babies, the majority of the things I heard from people as far as parenting goes were things like, here's how you deal with these babies. There were a few people, and I appreciate this, who said, who would just remind us like, hey, are you praying for your kids?
Yeah.
Like, are you praying for their salvation? Are you praying that God would give them a heart for, like that's, the practical is obviously important, but like those are the kind of parenting things I think that need to be more ingrained in our minds as parents. Like,
Yeah.
how can I teach
Yeah.
my kid to be like Jesus?
Well, I think that there's probably at least some parallels between this one and the money one we did several months ago, 5-6 months ago, that there are practical things to do with money financially, to be out of debt and to be wise with money. But if you're not if the aim isn't the glorification of God and the gospel of Christ, then you've missed the point. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we don't dismiss, I'll say it that way. We don't dismiss the practical, but the practical, I hate to even say is secondary to the gospel.
Oh,
But
100%.
I know, but it's so far
I got you.
behind the gospel
Yeah.
in the realm of importance
Yeah.
that like to say it's secondary, like it's like the practical things almost don't figure in, like when you're really talking about
Yeah,
who
I
you
think
want
it's
your
got to be
kids to
per
be.
kid. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example of that. Is when my older two enter middle school. They're out of middle school now. Yeah, that's weird.
That
They're
is.
in high school. When they entered middle school, Cammie and I never sat them down and said, "All right, you're not going to have sex. You're not drinking alcohol. You're not smoking weed." We never gave them a list of things like, now that you're in
Yeah.
middle school, you can't do these things. What we did is we encouraged them, and we pray this almost every morning on the way to school, is God, and then the boys will pray this: "God, may I honor you today with my life."
Yeah.
Because if that's the perspective they take with them to everything they do in life, I don't
Good.
have to tell
Mm-hmm.
them, "Hey, don't do this," because there may be situations where my universal principle of moralism doesn't apply.
Right.
And so if their perspective is, I want to honor God and everything I do, then they're able to make decisions based on that principle rather than, well, Dad told me I can't do this.
Right.
And so like alcohol is like, we don't want alcohol to be a taboo thing with our kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I want them to understand there's a reason you're not drinking now.
Yeah.
Like I joke with them sometimes, like we were at my cousin's wedding a couple summers ago, and we were getting food at the reception. And I think I had a shiner, but I had to get a plate for Cammie too. So I couldn't carry the 2 plates and the shiner back to the table. It was the glass bottle shiner. And so Seth had 1 plate. So I was like, "Hey dude, carry this." And so Seth's walking across the room with his plate and his shiner, and I got some video of him carrying it. So like, I'm sure there's a lot of parents that would be appalled to hear that you're a pastor and you let your kid carry a beer across the room. Yeah, because there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this isn't an environment where he's conveying the wrong idea. Like, this
Yeah.
is, it's, if my goal for him is to honor Jesus, I don't want him to think about alcohol as some taboo thing. I want him to think in regards to alcohol, I want to honor God with my life. And
Yeah.
I promise if that's the goal, you're going to have a lot less issues with your kids than if you just make a bunch of universal principles for them.
Yeah. Well, and the problem with making the universal principle is you're going to have to keep adding more
Mhm.
rules and more regulations. We've talked about that a lot, I think, over the last year or so
Uh-huh.
of doing the podcast, that like once you start making it about the law requires more law.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But Jesus is always sufficient. Like the
Always.
gospel of Christ, and say, look, make much of Christ. And so you said, I think, Micah, correct me, but that you pray that your boys would honor Jesus.
Mhm.
And
And
I-
they do too.
Yeah.
They pray that too now as their own prayer.
yeah. That's what we pray for our boys.
Mhm.
God, help us to honor you today. Help us to show people the same love and kindness today that you've shown us.
Mhm.
Similar kind of thing, because I want people to know that. And it's really encouraging, isn't it? Like when you hear from somebody else that your kid is like
Yeah.
kind or gracious or helped this person or whatever. And like that some of those things, now we know that there are people who don't know Jesus who are just nice people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we are not asking our kids to be nice for the sake of being nice. We believe that there's a God in heaven who loves people and desires people to know him. And we're saying to our kids, like, show people that love, show
Mhm.
people that kind of grace, because these people at school, some of them don't know Christ, and he wants them to know him. Like there's
Yeah.
and
And sometimes it doesn't even look like being nice. Like,
Yeah.
give an example,
Mhm.
like our boys know at their when they were in middle school, the middle school they went to has a rule like 0 fighting period. There's a 0 fighting tolerance. So if you're even remotely involved in a fight, you get like on campus suspension. And I just told my boys going into middle school, I know the principal, so I told him this too, just so he would be aware of it, that if they see someone, like getting beat up, and then, like, you can defend that person,
yeah,
Mhm.
even though that means you're going to get in trouble, especially if you see someone beating up on your brother,
yeah,
Yeah.
take care of it, man. Like,
Yeah.
like some people would be like, "Oh, that's not a good thing to teach your kids." Debatable. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
it's your debate. So that's not necessarily
the universal
nice.
rule that parents give kids, and I think, Micah, this is something you say to me a lot, which I appreciate over the years, is well, I don't think we can make that a universal rule. I don't think we can make that an absolute, stuff like that. So when as a parent, the universal rule is don't hit. How does that work? If now I know what you're going to say already as the parents, but like, how does that work when some person tries to snatch your kid up off the sidewalk?
Yeah.
And so
I'm
you're going to be
beat
like,
the
well,
crap out of
they're
that guy.
going to know in that moment to hit. Well, they're not.
Yeah.
So same thing with my boys. My two boys are younger than my boys are between your four.
Yeah.
Like you have two older and two younger. But I've told them the same thing. I was like, listen, here's some ways to really hurt people if they're trying to grab you or do something, like hit them, I've even like just playing, wrestling with your kids. Like I'll grab them around the wrist and forever, like I'm strong enough to just hold them with my thumb and finger around their wrist, their little wrist, and they can't break that. But even though they're littler than me and not as strong as me, I've shown them how to break that.
Yeah.
And I said, if you try to lift my thumb up, I have enough strength to keep my thumb closed. But if you push my thumb backwards towards the heel of my hand, I don't have any strength to resist that. And it breaks the grip. And so I'm showing them how to hurt people,
Yeah.
because I'm like, and I just, So there's a time to hit.
Yeah, and I think that
Isn't that in Ecclesiastes?
That's right.
And if your confidence as a parent is, my intentionality is to teach my kids to honor God, to honor Jesus in everything they do, then you're allowing them to grow in this decision-making process of when that's okay and when that's not okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll just tell you this. There are times your kids aren't going to fit in the right confines.
Right.
There's times that they're going to hit someone and they shouldn't have hit someone.
Right.
And they suffer the consequences, and that's part of the growth and that's part of the discipline of it.
Yeah.
And every kid's different in that way. My oldest son, Seth, I think someone could be like punching him in the face mad and he would be like sharing Jesus with them. Like that's him. Aiden, my next one, would probably be just like talking trash to him. My third son, Grayson, they would never even hit him because he's a freaking ball of muscle and he would just throw him down with his pinky, And then Hayes, they would never hit because he just smiles. Like every single one of those kids is different.
Yeah.
So my expectation can't be, well, Seth, the oldest, is like the nicest kid you'll ever meet. Therefore, all my other kids, I have the expectation that they're going to be that way.
Yeah.
It has to be, each kid has their own personality, their own nuances. You got to interact with them in that way.
And that again presents the problem of the law, right? Because it's like law is saying everybody does the same thing because of this. Whereas what the gospel does, saying to your kids, I just want you to honor Jesus, and showing them what that looks like. So we're not saying just tell them, oh, honor Jesus, but actually setting an example of what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then that allows each kid's personality to have some flexibility in that, because we're not trying to make these what was that a couple episodes ago, robot doctors, Pierce. We're not trying to make these automatons who just are all the exact same, right? We're trying to make people who are different, who have different personalities and different strengths and different weaknesses, people who love Jesus. And so one of the things that I would encourage you parents to do is talk with your spouse in front of your kids about the things you're doing in an effort to honor Jesus. Have those conversations with each other. Michelle and I will frequently, we share with the kids things we're praying for. We share with the kids, like when money's tight and we're praying to God to provide for us, and we'll pray with our boys about that. Had a situation recently where a friend of mine was having a different job interview situation, and he was really wanting this job. And so I called him and said, are you home? And he said, yeah. And so I just grabbed the boys and we went over and just prayed with his family.
It's cool.
And I just took the boys with me.
They need to see it.
Yeah, just to go over and, hey, here's a guy who's, he really wants this job, and we're just going to go pray with him because he's got an interview tomorrow.
Yep.
And the whole thing was like 10 minutes or less, because they're not far from our house, and we just the kids were already in their pajamas, and it didn't matter. Like I was just like, hey, we're going to come over, and so just show your kids those things.
I think kids mimic us more than we realize too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's for some of you, that might be the worst thing you've ever heard in your life, is that you have a tendency to mimic your parents. But I think what you're saying is important. Like if we live a life that honors God as parents, the implication is that our kids see that. Even like how we act as a husband and wife, like that, whether we know it or not, we're actually teaching our kids how to be a husband and how to be a wife.
Yeah. Well, my dad was not a good guy. But the one thing that I'm 46 years old and I still say, man, my dad really crushed that was work. Like every job he ever had, he did really well. Every job he ever had, he ended up advancing past people who had been there a lot longer than him. The last job he had for, I don't know, the decade before he died was shutting down wells for Chevron, who was a private contractor. And there were like 4 or 5 teams of people who did this around the country. And these other guys would take like, I don't know, 10 weeks to shut down a well. And my dad's crew would always take about 6 weeks to shut down a well. And these other crews would always have injuries. And my dad's crew never had an injury, not once. And he was just really good at managing that. And he always really good. And I remember back when I was in 6th grade, going into 7th grade, we had just moved back from Oklahoma to Midland. And my dad was without work. And so he took whatever job he could find. So Monday through Friday, I think even maybe on Saturdays, he worked for a rent-a-center as a repo guy. And so he'd get to work by 9 and he'd get home around 6. And then he'd take a little bit of a nap. And then he'd go to work at 10 o'clock at night where he was a nighttime security guard at a bank. And he worked from 10 at night to 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And then he'd come home and he'd shower and he'd go to work again.
Wow.
And so he had about 6 hours a day that he was not working. And he did that for 6 months. And I just remember like he just did whatever he needed to do. And here's what's really interesting. I was thinking about this just a few days ago with Michelle, that for all the crap my dad put us through, part of the reason that I still look at my dad and think, oh man, look at what a great worker he was, is because my mom actually talked about that. She would say, look at how hard your dad works. And so like, it was the only good thing you could say about him, but she said it about him. And here I am still all these years later thinking that. And I think if we as parents can not only show our kids, take them to go pray with a friend or invite them in on the conversations, not only show those things to our kids, but if we can show our kids what our spouses are doing. And if both mom and dad have it as their aim to make much of Jesus, first of all, that's an awesome thing to have that in a home, because that's not in every home anymore. But if both mom and dad have it as their aim to make much of Jesus, then another thing that you can do is you can point out to your kid, look at how mom's doing this. Look at how she's loving Jesus in this. And look at how mom's serving, and she's serving us because Christ is a servant. And you can take all these things and instill that kind of godly character in your kids just by pointing it out, I think sometimes.
Yep. I think another thing in that same vein is being able to praise your kids in the same way that you would criticize them. So we I think as parents, our tendency is to be really good at the discipline part of it. No, don't do that, or you're gonna get in trouble for this. But we're not as good at praising our kids. When they do something really well, praising them. And it's funny how much of a positive reinforcement will impact them, not just in their growth, but I think that there's some emotional reinforcement that happens too along with that. I mean, we could probably, all of us listening can think of emotional tension and strain we have ingrained in us from people who've berated us, or cut us down. And I think what we have opportunity to do as parents, when we have these kids for a short amount of time. I know it feels like a long time when you got a 1-year-old, but and my kids, my Seth's a sophomore.
A couple more years.
Gone in a few years, not gone, but they're leaving home. You know what I mean? So we get the short amount of time, and
he's about to be a junior, right? Like this fall.
Sophomore.
He's going to be a sophomore.
Yeah. He was a freshman.
Yeah. Okay.
So in August he'll be sophomore, but still, he's gone soon.
Yeah.
And so if taking the time to praise your kids. Now listen, if you think you have a kid who is not worthy of praise, that's an issue with you.
Yes. The problem is with you.
there may, too often, I think our expectations for our kids supersede what they should be.
Yeah.
I played soccer. None of my kids play soccer.
Yeah.
They started, but just don't like it. And so I could, moan and mope about it. I played disc golf. I am involved in the disc golf world intensely, and my kids barely play disc golf. I could berate them for that, or I could just say, man, there's sports you guys love, and none of those are the sports that I play, but I'm going to praise you for, I'm going to encourage you and praise you in that. When they have a rough game, one of the things I don't do, and this is just a personal thing for me as a competitive athlete, if they played bad, I don't just go to them and be like, it's okay, buddy, it's okay. because that's not actually it. For those of you who are competitive athletes, like that's not really helpful.
Yeah.
Like you want to be able to acknowledge it. What I do is I just give them a hug and be like, man, it's okay. You're going to be okay. It doesn't help to not acknowledge what just happened.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what I mean though, is like recognizing each kid,
Yeah.
and where they're at. And so you might have a kid, that's just me. So you might have a kid who has a rough time at school or a game or something, and you need to come in and just like dote on them and love on them and tell them it's okay. It's not a big deal. You might have a kid that is super independent that you need to just give a hug and buy some ice cream and be like, excited about the next event or the next game. So there's got to be a sense, I think, of us as parents where we recognize each kid as an individual. Proverbs says, train a child in the way they should go. I think that even though it's probably not speaking specifically of that, I think the acknowledgement is that everybody has a bend. You know what I mean? Like everybody's got a tendency, and as parents, we have to recognize that it can't be universal.
Right.
You could have the universal principle of teaching your kids to honor God in everything they do. I think that's fair,
Yes.
but it's got to be individual.
The gospel's always universal.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't want to be like pigeonholed into this, but outside of that, it's going to be really difficult to say that anything's universal.
Agreed.
Like with the gospel, that's universal. But one of the things too, I think a lot of us as parents are trying. Our aim is to do better than our parents did, or give our kids a better situation than we had.
Yeah.
And I think that while that sounds noble, I think it's the wrong goal.
Absolutely.
The goal is the gospel, and I'm still learning. A few months ago, I bought some stuff for kids camp, some different games, and I bought some wiffle ball equipment, like 2 plastic bats and like 6 plastic balls. Right, it came in a set. And my boys were like, "Hey, Dad, can we try that out?" And this was before kids camp, and so part of me is going, "No, it's not." We're going to say that for kids. And I was like, "Yeah, go for it," because on the church property right next to our house, we have a little softball field. And I was like, "Yeah, go test it out. Let me know how it is." And as they were walking out the door, I said, "Don't break it. It's literally a wiffle ball bat and a wiffle ball. Like the whole set's
how
like
expensive was
$5.
that? Yeah.
You know what I mean?" I was like, "Don't break it." And then I said, "Wait, come back." I said, just use it like it's supposed to be used, And I said, "And just be careful with it." And then I went, "Wait, come back." And I was like, "You know what? Have a great time. If it breaks, I'll spend the $5 to get another one." But I had to. I kind of went through this process of like what I've always heard.
Yeah.
Like, don't break it.
Yeah.
Like you need to be careful with it. We just got that.
Yeah.
And so I gave them that first, and I thought, no, that's not right. Okay, you can use it, but you need to be careful with it. And then like here's the thing. Here's what I don't want. It's literally a piece of plastic, and there's a chance, right, that they go out and they hit it, and they're boys, so there's also a chance they go out and hit rocks with it, right?
Why would you not?
Yeah, exactly. And
They
there's
go so far.
there's a
Classic
decent
bat.
chance it breaks. That's a real possibility. And what I didn't want to create in them was this idea of, oh man, we broke it. Now Dad's going to be mad. Now we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
It's literally a piece of plastic that I can get for $5.
So here's a question, more practical side of it.
Yeah.
But like, let's just say that one of your boys, every time they picked up something, they were incredibly irresponsible with it.
Right.
Does that change how you instruct them in that moment? Like let's just say one of your kids like on purpose picks up a plate and just smashes it on the ground. Like you're having trouble stopping them from breaking things. Does that change how you?
Yeah,
interact
for
with
sure.
that?
But I think the issue of the breaking things is secondary to
I know. The reason I ask is because I think a lot of times the tendency is for us to hear like what you just said and think that's a universal principle for how I should treat my kids.
Absolutely not.
What you're saying, just to be clear, is the intention is not to just do something because that's how you've always thought it should be done,
right?
But rather intentionally. Like your point was, it didn't matter if your kids broke that bat or not.
Yeah, it's a $5 thing.
Right.
In this case, there's a really good chance that thing they're playing with is going to break.
And you weren't trying in that moment to teach them a lesson for life. You were just letting them play.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference is like what we tend to do as parents is hear a story like that and go, that's how I'm supposed to parent.
Right.
And that's not what we can do. We can't do that either with each other's stories.
But I also think that what we tend to do, right, is we tend to make a bigger deal as parents out of things that are wiffle ball bat equivalent. And so that's what I'm having to learn to do with my boys is.
Okay. I think just to be clear, I think that's dependent on your situation.
Yeah,
so like,
for sure.
This is, just to be clear, what you're saying is you have grown up with this tendency of thinking this way.
Yeah, that's how I think.
Yeah. It's just not universal.
No.
Like every parent goes in thinking this wiffle ball bat is more important than my
no,
kids.
no. But for me, it's one of those things where I've realized that there are a lot of things that I was placing too much value on.
Yeah.
And that what that did is that made me harsher towards my kids than I needed to be in this moment. Like, like kids spill things. Kids have to learn how to. Kids have to learn how to throw, and kids have to like. I threw a softball through our window when I was a kid because I was throwing it up on the roof and letting it roll down to me. And one time I did not throw it high enough, and it went through the window. and so based off of that, like when they're throwing stuff up on the roof, I'm like, hey, just from experience, don't do it right in front of the window because I'm just telling you, like.
I broke a window.
Which that I think, okay, that's the good point to make. Is like from what you said about your parents earlier, like you don't want to be your parents. I think what we could say is we can learn from our parents.
For sure. There's a ton to learn.
Instead of trying to not be our parents, we could learn from our experiences with our parents growing up. Like knowing that you could accidentally throw a window through, or throw a ball through a window. Dude, that would be amazing. Well, that would actually be my kids. Like, hey, Dad, I found this window outside, one of this remodel windows.
But let's be honest, that's kind of fun.
That sounds awesome.
It's fun to pick up a big piece of.
They have done that.
Yeah, it's
with
fun.
Me and remodel. Yeah.
Well, but the other thing too is like when we got them a BB gun last year, teaching them safety and teaching them like you don't. Look, don't shoot towards the house. Yeah. Because there's a good chance of not. But that to me is just wisdom. Like you want to look at where the end of the barrel is pointed. And if beyond your target is a house or a window or a person, you have to be aware of that because that's hunting safety. That's right. And but what I used to do is I'd make a much bigger deal out of those things than, I mean, like they're not gospel. No. And so, yes, there is a way to frame those things and teach your kids. And yes, different kids are going to require different types of instruction. But I have found that I hold more loosely to my instruction on the things that aren't gospel related. Like still trying to tweak that and still trying to direct them, but not with the same kind of passion that I would like, man, I want you to know Christ. Like you were saying at the beginning,
I think the passion is the way to say it.
Yeah.
Because I think the only reason I'm like trying to clarify is
it's good.
I think that you are the kind of person that people try to take advice from all the time. And I think what you're expressing is your experiences and your tendencies. And that's not everybody's.
Right, for sure.
And so like, I don't want anybody to think, well, this is how Ryan does it. Practically, this is how I should do it.
No.
Practically. But what your point is, if you're more passionate about gun safety than you are about Jesus, switch the passion.
Right.
Is your point.
Yeah, gun safety matters.
Teach them gun safety.
Yeah, for sure.
We do the same thing. BB gun's a great way to teach your kid. There you go, Pierce. You want to be a real
I've already taught her, yeah.
Taught her. I'll tell Grayson, we were camping earlier before the summer in the school year, and we had the BB gun or the pellet gun out, and Grayson was shooting it, and he knows gun safety. Like he's 9, he knows how to handle a rifle, he knows what he's supposed to do. And when he was walking around with it, he swung it past where all of us were sitting at the campfire. And because he knows, I grabbed him and I looked him intensely in the eye and I said, if you point that gun at someone again, you're done.
Yeah.
Like you don't get it the rest of the weekend.
Yeah.
And he knew I was serious. Why? I wasn't trying to berate him. That's a big deal.
That's a huge
deal.
deal.
At his point, it's not like he just picked up a gun and
right.
And for me, like probably
the training has already happened. Yeah.
Probably
the expectation's already there.
Is like I wasn't mad at him. I wasn't angry at him and yell at him. I was just intense.
But it required intensity.
Right. And now he'll probably remember for a very long time now.
Yeah.
I don't even swing guns in that direction. So that's what I'm saying. Like practically,
yes.
Now someone can't take that and go, okay, when I'm teaching my kid gun safety, I got to be intense like Micah. Yeah. That's not the point. Our point, which I think is so well put, Ryan, is that if my passion is gun safety and not Jesus, that needs to be switched. Make your passion Jesus. Teach your kids the practical stuff, but those things, to your point, pale in comparison to the importance of teaching them to honor Jesus with their life.
Yeah, and I'm finding, and then I want to hear from you, Pierce, but I'm finding that like, I mean, just a lot of stuff. Like we've talked about this, I feel like before, but it used to be when Riker was 3 or 4, he was such a picky eater, and I'd be like, "You're not getting down until you eat all your food." But that was literally how I knew to do it.
Yeah,
you know. And then it became like it would stress him out and it would stress me out. And then it became less about that and more about like, look, buddy, I need you to eat. And if you're not hungry right now, that's fine. But before bed, you got to get some food in your belly. Like you need it to grow. And it became, I think one of the things that I have had to do, and I'll say it that way instead of it as a like we should do, but one of the things that I've learned I've had to do is have more conversations with my kids and try to understand, all right, why did you do this thing? and help them understand why maybe it was a good choice or maybe it was a bad choice or a different way to make that choice. And like, because I think one of the things that we do unfairly as adults frequently is we expect our kids to know how to do anything without being trained, like how to respond to grief or to hurt or to sorrow or to frustration or like until we've taught our kids how to with according to the gospel deal with anger, because there is a way to deal with anger that's righteous. We can't be mad at them that they're not doing it well. Like that's on us to shape that. And grief, like, you know, like there's going to be things that cause you grief. Okay. How do we focus on Christ in the midst of our grief? You know, not that you can't be grief stricken, not that you can't be heartbroken, but how do we focus on Jesus in this, you know? And so
maybe one more thought before Pierce tells us how to be a real parent in the midst of this is, on that note, I think what's a necessity for us is to care about our kids more than we care about us.
Yes.
So I think that if your tendency is to worry so much about what you feel, more so than your kids, then that's going to be passed on.
For sure.
I'm not even going to say like right or wrong. I'm just saying like you will see that impact your kids in a negative way.
Yeah, because they will come to the conclusion that your reputation matters more than theirs.
Well, I'll give you an example. I mean, my dad was a phenomenal dad, but he was his dad was a movie producer and writer in the Philippines. Super art guy, and he would come home between movie making stuff, and he would sit at the typewriter trying to write another script. They'd sit there for days. And my dad told me that his parents used to fight because his mom would call his dad lazy, even though he was working. I don't know why she called him. Anyways, so that was so ingrained in my dad's mind when he was a business owner, owned a moving and warehousing company before he was a pastor. He worked hard because he didn't want to be lazy like his dad.
Yeah.
And so even then when he was a pastor and we were growing up, his mindset still was, I'm going to work hard because I don't want to be lazy. There were times I remember we would do like family vacations or we'd be at a soccer tournament and we would get to the hotel. This is pre-cell phone. And my dad would, as soon as we get to the room, go and get on the phone and make sure everything was okay at church. Like the world's going to continue to spin minus you getting on the phone. You know what I mean? And as good of a father as he was, I remember in those moments thinking, I don't ever want my kids to think that my job means more to me than them.
Isn't that interesting that your dad's view of his dad was based off of what his mom said in terms of work, and my view of my dad's work was based on how my mom spoke about that.
He didn't have a good family growing up either, and so I think that's maybe something to be said about, you know, even without good parents, you still have those not good parents still had an impact on you.
For sure. Pierce,
Absolutely.
you have a 1-year-old, man. What kind of things are you doing in parenting?
I know everything now.
That's awesome, dude.
I'm
avoiding honey.
I'm 13 or 14 months in now. So actually, so to touch on a few of the points you guys have brought up, especially in the last few bits. So you had mentioned like teaching. How can they know how to handle certain things in life if we don't teach them through it? And I think really all the things that I'd kind of written down in response to what you guys were saying were so heavy in my mind before even getting married, even of just all the things you guys have just discussed. Because I mean, I think back to trips with you, Micah, like playing in my early 20s, playing bass, just talking about how you're parenting your kids, talking about your marriage, talking about your family life, talking about all those things, just because you were the first person in my life that was what's the best
real
way to
dad?
put this? Yeah, it was a real dad. That I don't mean any offense to anybody that it was in my life around that time, that was very boldly, intentionally being a father and a husband. And I think that I was able to, I saw that and I was like, holy crap, I need to ask a lot of questions here, just kind of, and learn a lot from that. So I've had a lot of these conversations. And then whenever, a few years later, whenever we started hanging out, Ryan, we started asking more questions and stuff like that as well. And just talking more about these types of things. But I think these three things kind of tying together. One of them was we talked about teaching your kids, hiding stuff from your kids, or you said like bring them along to pray, bring them in on these discussions of what you're learning and what you're growing through. And you also said treating your kids care for your kids more than you care about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think all three of those things really tie into each other so well. I think really they all tie in to care about them more than you care about yourself, which is such a brilliant picture of humility and the gospel as well. And what happens when you don't teach and you just expect certain things, what you're doing is you're elevating them to a level that they shouldn't be elevated to, and also you're caring about your uncomfortability more than you're caring about their response. Why don't you know how to handle this right now? Why can't you process this right now? You're making me uncomfortable. You're embarrassing me right now in Walmart. Like, what are you doing right now? I'm gonna grab you by your wrist and yank you to the car right now. I'm gonna spank you in front of everybody right now. Like, and I'm not saying none of those things in themselves are in themselves wrong. But when you're elevating your own uncomfortability above your child's well-being or above the gospel in that moment, there's an issue right there, because what you're doing is you're elevating yourself above Jesus in that moment. And some, I mean, kind of like what you had brought up, how in those moments that may look different. And if you were to have a moment like that with one of your boys, with each boy, that would look different. Like, and so even within single families, if you have multiple children, how you would handle a situation like that would look different with each individual children. But the heartbeat can still be universal, kind of like what you said, Ryan. So these are things that I had already been thinking about, and kind of I saw a lot at Hastings when I worked there. I saw a lot with other parents and other just being in youth groups and being in ministry, kind of in college, and just seeing other people as parents, just seeing things that I admire and things that I didn't admire. But I still began to see these three things that I was like, man, I want to be able to teach my kids from a viewpoint of Jesus. How do we handle anger? And I think that so my daughter being 14 months now, when she falls, a lot of the times I'll kind of evaluate that fall. And sometimes I'll look at her and be like, "No, you're okay." Like sometimes we stumble, you're fine. And there's other times where it's a fall. Like it is, if she fell a couple months ago, Micah, at your place, and she had a bruise across her cheek. She hit that.
I knew she
table.
was crying like hard, but
so she
hit that table.
She did, yeah. So she had kind of like she jumped, or she stumbled, and then she hit the couch and bounced back to the table, and then tried to grab the couch, and then did like a spin move,
solid wood,
and then like hit that table. Yeah. So in those moments though, I picked her up and I held her, and I was like, let me look at you, let me make sure you're okay. And so what's funny is in all of those moments, actually, your voice, Ryan, before we were really even friends, kind of reverberates in my ears. Of you had said to college, to ASU, BSM, years and years and years ago, you said, you'll never just wake up who you want to be. You've got to start being who you want to be now. It's very paraphrased, but that's basically kind of what you'd said.
Wow.
And you meant a lot of it in regards to discipline, in regards to kind of this mind shift of acknowledge who you are in Jesus now, because you're not just one day going to wake up and just really know who you are in Jesus. Like, begin this process now. And with parenting, I begun that process the day that Riley was born, and it was rough. I mean, we've talked about the day that Riley was born. Yeah. I wanted to start the intentionality then, because I know that if I didn't start it then, it's not just going to start the day she turns 5.
No,
it's not just all of a sudden going to start. So I knew that, okay, I got to put it into practice now. So how can I put it into practice now? Even though she can't understand me necessarily, she doesn't fully understand English. I'm going to start teaching her things. I'm going to start walking through these things. I'm going to start showing her this care. I'm going to start praying with her. I'm going to start telling her the things that I'm being done with, or that I'm learning. One of my most hated memes ever, I'm seeing just different variations around it. The most ridiculous one I saw was a man carrying his daughter on his shoulders through a river filled with sharks.
River filled with sharks. Nice.
And it said, "Carry them and hide them so that they won't have to worry about it," or something like that. And it was like, it's basically like, he did the work so you didn't have to, is kind of what they're trying to get at. But I'm like, what? Like, fight the sharks together.
Yeah.
Like, you're old enough, help them swim. Like you can also try, if you're about to get eaten and die, you should probably train her to fight these sharks. They're still going to be there when you get eaten.
Yeah,
bro.
I mean, these are river sharks.
Yeah, exactly. These are river sharks.
This is some sort of sci-fi channel.
That's like the original story of Jaws.
Yeah. Probably a bull shark.
Swam up the river. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I hate those things, because it's just like shield your kids so you can protect them. And really what that is stay together for the kids. Like, it's this whole thing of like, let's protect the kids. Let's show them that nothing in the world is wrong. Everything's okay.
Yeah.
And then what happens is they turn 18, and then all of a sudden mommy and daddy don't love each other anymore. And there's all this hatred in the world, and all these things going on. But wait a minute, this doesn't.
Everything's a lie.
Everything's a lie.
Yeah.
And I despise it. But when you live with, when you parent with Jesus at the core, when you parent with the gospel at the intentionality, when it comes to the gospel, your life's not about you already.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so when you're parenting through the lens of the gospel, your life's not about you, your life's about Jesus. So it's not about my comfortability. I mean, even now, like if I do something dumb or silly, like even if it's just I turn the stove on too high and I drop something in grease and pop myself, like I'll just turn to Hannah or turn to Riley, and I'll just tell her I'm dumb.
That's funny.
Like there's little things like that like I'll just be like, well, Dad's being dumb. Just
Hey, on that note, I think another thought that's really important for us as parents is remembering that our identity rests in Jesus.
Yeah.
And there's grace for us as parents.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
I've screwed up so many times with my kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Oh, just kidding.
Yeah, I know, so many times. But I can't, like let those things keep me from being a parent who
Absolutely.
seeks to be a godly parent in that way, like to show my kids Jesus. So like,
Yeah.
no matter how many times you've screwed up with your kids, this is something that you can do starting now.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in the midst of and I think it's great what you're saying, like admit your screw up. Like,
Yeah.
man, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have told you to not break it. I mean,
Yeah.
that was a really quick
Yeah.
turnaround for you. But I
Yeah.
mean, like realistically, like, maybe you
It's
did
a plastic
something,
ball.
Yeah.
Have
Or
fun.
maybe you did something like maybe you even have kids who are adult kids now. And maybe you need to go to them and just be like, hey, listen, I screwed this up.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry. And this
Gosh,
is not right for me to do that. And
It would mean so much. Like as much as I know you're probably convinced, if you're listening to this and that is the case, and you're probably convinced like, well, so much time has passed, they're probably over it. They're not. I mean, even if they are believers in Christ and they are over it in the sense of their identity rests in Jesus, there is probably part of them that still, gosh, they would love that. There's aspect.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, even if they are over it, the humility and the grace
Oh,
that
man.
demonstrates is so meaningful.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
And y'all's
provides-
relationship would grow so much.
Yeah,
through
yeah,
that. Yeah.
And I think
Oh.
there's a sense of growth in you too. Like
Yeah.
that's you ultimately acknowledging that your identity rests in Jesus. Because if we're being honest, the only reason you wouldn't do that is because of pride.
Yeah. And I think it's a really brilliant point to bring up as well, is that is identity in Jesus. Repeat that to yourself every single day. May your kids be newborns, may your kids be in theater, may your kids be in sports, whatever, regardless of their accolades, regardless of where they are in life, regardless of how good they, quote unquote, how good they do, whatever, your identity rests in Christ. Your identity doesn't rest in your kids.
Right.
And that's one thing that, like, I mean, even just raising Riley, like trying to remember, like, our identity as a couple, Hannah and I, is in Jesus.
Yeah.
Our identity as parents is in Jesus. Our identity as individuals is in Jesus. I mean, obviously, all those things are tied together. I'm not saying like we live like 15 different segmented lives,
right.
but like our us as a marriage isn't dependent upon Riley. It's dependent upon Jesus.
Right.
Us as parents is dependent upon all of our efforts. It's dependent upon Jesus. And so, trying to live that out now. And I think that there's as much as we joke about not being a real parent and those types of things as well, to encourage plenty. I know, right? To encourage plenty of you guys out there. I would say that I have nothing to compare it to. But this first year of life with Riley, was striving for this amount of intentionality. I can't imagine it any other way, because I know myself, and I know certain weaknesses that I have, and I know that the Lord is good and the Lord is gracious and the Lord brings restoration. But thank God that He was able to bring me to a place before we had Riley to say, hey man, let's start.
Yeah.
Let's start heavy and hard, and let's go at it. And that way, when she's 5, when she's 15, when she's 30, when she's 60,
Yeah.
you're still giving her Jesus.
Yeah, you've built that as a pattern.
Exactly.
And we learn things by repetition. We learn things by
Absolutely.
practice.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one thing that she'll never be able to question. Like, that from as early as long as I remember, my parents always gave me Jesus. And in the midst of that, they may have screwed up, but it always came back to Jesus.
Mhm.
Even in the midst of failure, we acknowledge the forgiveness and grace in Jesus together. So to answer your question, I mean, as the parent master, obviously,
Obviously.
yeah, I think that intentionality, like you had said, Ryan, the brilliance of it is the universality of it. Is that the right way to say
Sure.
that? Is that the right word?
Sure.
Well, you keep
It's
saying sure.
a
Yes
word.
should be
Yeah.
the answer. Sure, that's a word.
You asked if it was the right word. It
what's-
is a word. It's a correct word.
What's the right word?
I don't
That
know.
works.
I mean, that works.
I don't know if there is the right word.
That's gonna be my
because it
goal
could be
now,
right.
to find the right word. Yeah, the
depends what you mean.
The universal nature, the universal nature of the statement that those of us who are believers in Christ, those of us who have placed our faith in Jesus as the promised Messiah, those of us who follow after him, who are reconciled to God as sons and daughters of the creator of the universe, who've been blessed with children. We have an opportunity to reflect his goodness, an opportunity to reflect his love, an opportunity to reflect his grace,
His image,
and his
Genesis
image.
1.
Exactly, to reflect his image. And the means by which we do that is the same means by which he did it, was by the means of Jesus.
Yeah.
But by showing them Jesus.
Yep.
It's not about us.
Yep.
It's about Jesus. You guys don't have anything to add?
No, that was great.
Mike, you got a simpler hack for us?
I do. I'd like to give you one hack to fix 2 problems in life.
Heck yeah.
So it's a 2 for 1. We like to burn candles at our house.
Nice.
Not like weird seance stuff, just like scented. For Mother's Day this year, Hayes wanted to get Cam a candle. So, but one of the problems with burning candles is the wick burns out before all the wax is gone. Like there's
Mhm.
always some wax left in the bottom of the candle. You know, it always feels like it's a little bit of a waste. Problem number 1. Problem number 2, cars get stinky. Like that's just the nature of cars. Like you drop a French fry down there, especially an onion. Oh my gosh, like an onion
Oof.
falling off a burger. And if you're one of those people who don't eat in your car, then just skip past this because your car, you don't need this.
Your car
hack
smells
your
amazing.
car smells amazing. Or like me, the car I bought last year from my buddy John Makovica in Alabama, which I will be trading out this year again for another
Nice.
car.
Hey, Mac.
Hey Mac. Someone smoked in it, so like it still has these like faint like sense of smoke. So car smells and extra wax. If you combine those together, what you can do is get a little mini mason jar, poke holes in the lid with a nail, and take your extra wax from your candle, put it in the mason jar, and put that mason jar under one of your seats in the car.
Nice.
Ooh.
And as your car gets hot, especially in the summer, it melts the wax and the scent comes out of the holes in the mason jar and you have a free air freshener.
Nice.
That's dope.
I like it.
And it's got more smells. I mean, what sucks about buying air fresheners for your car is there's like a limited number of smells.
Yeah.
But
Now you
this
can
is
get
like-
warm apple pie.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
can you imagine warm apple pie in your car? You just want to eat all the time.
Yeah. I already do eat all the time.
And then you'll eat warm apple pie in your car and drop it. And then your car will really smell like warm apple pie.
Then you get clean linen candle next to cover up the warm apple pie that you dropped between the seats.
My life story through candle titles, through candle names. You must have spilled the pie right here.
Yep.
Speaking of spilling the pie, Steven's over there.
That has become my favorite part of the podcast, I think.
That
That and your transitions lately.
You can't think of a segue to save your life at the beginning.
I know, right? Once you get to the end, I'm like, oh yeah, here we go.
I'm just sitting here thinking about like that, like 3-day-old forgotten about breakfast burrito in the backseat car.
Oh gosh, that's like rock solid by the time
I
you
don't
get
think
to it.
any
Yeah.
amount of wax will ever take care of
No.
that.
Yeah, that's gross.
No.
Oh man. So yeah, go check out Steven at the Garden Audio. See the talked about breakfast burrito. He's maybe he posted it over there.
I'm
You're gonna
documenting.
you're gonna want to see what's going
We
on.
need to meet up
Television.
at Diego's again for breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to eat hot sauce this time so I don't get absolutely ridiculed about it.
Yeah.
Apparently that was a big deal.
Well, you ate Diego's without hot sauce?
Yeah.
Yeah, Diego's is good. You
Yeah.
put steak
Diego's
sauce on
is
like
good.
a $100 steak.
What do
put
you
steak
like?
sauce on
What are you
it?
like, a white person or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't eat hot sauce. We're in the
We'll
same
never know.
category.
I'm not on camera.
That's right.
You sound white.
He actually owns Diego's.
My name is Diego.
Well, if you want to know Steven's race, go follow him over there at the Garden Audio. Speaking of social media, we're also on social media. We are at Simpler Pod on Facebook and Instagram. Go check us out. Follow along with what we got going over there. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anchor.fm/simpler. Go check us out. If you're having a hard time finding us, because simpler is a pretty basic word, if you actually search Simpler Pod, all one word, you can usually find us across the board on everything. Be sure to subscribe on wherever you can, follow wherever you can, leave a review wherever you can, share wherever you can. It helps out greatly to build the Simpler community, to be able to share everything that we got going on here, and to keep the conversation going, to continually encourage one another to keep Christ as core. That is something that we say every single time, and it's something that we mean. It's not just redundant.
Yeah.
It's not just a formula. It is something that we have been able to see the fruit fruit of living a life free from the mess of and the muck and the mire of just all these theological nuances, cultural nuances, all these different things that cultural Christianity seems to shove in our face, and rather just keep our focus on Jesus, and we can see things clearly. And life is so much simpler. Hence the name, if you guys didn't know. So as always, keep Christ as core. What could be simpler than that? We will talk to you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.